Excuse me, doctor. Could you please examine my son? His fever is 104.
Dr. Bellworth's lip curled.
Jesus Christ. Did you crawl in from a shelter? You reek! Shut your mouth! I don't treat welfare trash!
Doctor, please. He's just a baby.
Security, drag this ghetto out before she infects my real patients.
The mother stood frozen, her burning child trembling against her chest. Phones came out. A teenager live-streamed. A white couple laughed openly. Someone whispered, "About damn time." Nobody stood up for her. But not one soul in that room could have imagined that in just 20 minutes, every single one of them would be on their knees, begging this woman for forgiveness. To understand how that moment happened, how a mother ended up frozen in a fluorescent-lit waiting room while a doctor screamed slurs at her sick child, you have to rewind 8 hours. Back to a quiet Saturday afternoon, in a neighborhood most people would never guess belonged to her. Tanya Moore lived in a brownstone on a tree-lined street, the kind of street where neighbors waved from their porches and kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on. Her home was warm but understated. A worn leather couch, family photos on the mantel, a piano in the corner her 6-year-old son Aiden was learning to play, one stubborn finger at a time. That afternoon, Tanya was curled up on the couch in sweatpants, reviewing expansion blueprints on her laptop. Sunlight spilled through the bay window, catching the steam rising from her coffee. Emails pinged softly in the background. Subject lines scrolled past. Q3 budget approval. New wing groundbreaking. Board meeting Tuesday, 9 a.m. She scrolled without reading. Saturday was Aiden Day. Work could wait. Aiden padded into the living room in dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Mama, my head hurts." She pressed her lips to his forehead. Warm. A little too warm. The thermometer read 101.4. Probably just a bug. She gave him children's Tylenol, made him toast with honey, and tucked him under a blanket to watch cartoons. He fell asleep within minutes, his small hand still gripping a plastic dinosaur. Tanya went back to her laptop. Outside, a lawnmower hummed. A dog barked 2 houses down. Everything was ordinary. Everything was fine. 2 hours later, a cry woke her from a half-doze. She found Aiden drenched in sweat, shivering so hard his teeth clicked together. His pajamas were soaked through. The thermometer beeped and flashed a number that made her stomach drop. 104.3. Baby, look at Mommy. Can you look at Mommy?" His eyes rolled toward her, glassy and unfocused. His breathing came in small, rapid gasps. She grabbed her phone and called his pediatrician. Voicemail, closed for the weekend. She called her husband, James, out of town at an architecture conference in Denver, phone off during a panel. Her text came out shakier than she intended. "Taking Aiden to ER. Don't panic. I'll update you." She grabbed her keys. No time to change. She was in yoga pants, an old college hoodie with a coffee stain on the sleeve, her hair pulled into a messy bun. No makeup, no jewelry, just a terrified mother with a burning child in her arms. In the car, she whispered to him the whole way. "Stay with Mommy, baby. We're almost there. You're going to be okay." The streetlights streaked across his pale face. His head rolled against her shoulder at every turn. She drove to the closest facility, Mercy Grace Medical Center, East Campus, a satellite location. She'd been there exactly twice in 5 years, both times for boardroom walkthroughs wearing tailored suits and heels. Tonight, nobody would recognize her. Tonight, she was just another exhausted mom in a hoodie. The automatic doors hissed open. The smell hit her first. Antiseptic layered over stale coffee and floor cleaner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like trapped insects. A muted TV in the corner played late-night news nobody watched. Plastic chairs were bolted to the floor in rows. A vending machine hummed beside a cracked water fountain. She approached the intake desk. A nurse with tired eyes and a kind face, her badge read Patricia Owens, looked up. Patricia's expression softened the moment she saw Aiden. She took his temperature, checked his pulse, and wrote notes with a practiced hand. Her eyebrows pulled together. "Sweetheart, have a seat. We'll get him seen as soon as we can." Tanya sank into a plastic chair, Aiden limp in her lap. She pressed a cool cloth to his forehead and rocked him gently. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. The clock on the wall ticked loud in her ears. Then she noticed something. A white couple walked in with a toddler who had a small rash on his cheek. They were called back within 10 minutes. Another family arrived after them, their teenager holding an ice pack to his wrist. Called back within 15. Tanya checked the clock. They'd been waiting 42 minutes. Aiden's breath was getting shallower against her chest. She stood up. Tanya walked to the nurse's station with Aiden still in her arms. Her voice was soft but steady. "Excuse me. My son has been waiting almost 45 minutes. His fever is over 104. He's barely responsive. Can someone please see him?" Patricia looked up from her computer. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes flickered toward a door at the back of the ER, then back to Tanya. "Let me get to the doctor. Just one moment, sweetheart." She disappeared through the door. Tanya waited. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A child somewhere in the back was crying. A coffee cup sat abandoned on the counter, a ring of cold brown liquid pooling around it. Then the door swung open, and Dr. Craig Bellworth walked out. He was tall, silver-haired, mid-50s. His white coat was crisp, starched to perfection. A stethoscope hung around his neck like jewelry. He moved with the easy arrogance of a man who had never been told no in his life. His eyes scanned the waiting room the way a landlord scans a property he's already decided to evict. They landed on Tanya. Lingered. Traveled from her messy bun, down her faded hoodie with the coffee stain, to her scuffed sneakers. His mouth tightened at one corner. Not quite a smile, not quite a sneer. Something colder than both. He walked past her, called out a name from the clipboard in his hand. "Henderson? The ankle sprain?" A white teenager stood up from across the room, limping dramatically, his father supporting his elbow. They had arrived 20 minutes after Tanya. Bellworth greeted them warmly, clapped the father on the shoulder, and led them toward the back. Tanya stepped forward. "Doctor, please, my son has been waiting since—" Bellworth turned slowly. He looked at her like she was a stain on his carpet. "Ma'am, sit down. I'll get to you when I get to you." "His fever is 104. His breathing is—" "I said sit. Down." He disappeared through the door with the teenager. Tanya stood there, Aiden's small body burning against her chest. She felt heat rising behind her eyes and forced it back. Now was not the time. She returned to her chair. Patricia walked past, carrying a clipboard. Their eyes met for half a second. Patricia's face was twisted with something Tanya couldn't quite read. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. Or both. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Aiden whimpered against her shoulder. His lips were cracking. His skin had gone from burning hot to an awful, waxy pale. Tanya pressed 2 fingers against his throat. His pulse was racing, too fast, too thin. She stood up again. This time, Bellworth was at the nurse's station, laughing at something on his phone. He didn't look up as she approached. "Doctor, I need you to examine my son. Right now. His heart rate is elevated. His breathing is shallow. He's barely conscious." Bellworth finally raised his eyes. He sighed. A long, theatrical sigh, the kind you'd give a child asking the same question for the 5th time. "Lady, I am the physician here. You are not." I will decide what constitutes an emergency in my ER. Do you understand those words? He needs his mother to calm down and stop diagnosing him off Google. He turned to Patricia. Give the kid some Motrin. Note it in the chart. Next patient. Patricia hesitated. She looked at Aiden. Really looked. She could see what Tanya could see. The glassy eyes, the shallow chest, the bluish tint beginning at the edges of his lips. Doctor, maybe we should at least run a CBC? His color doesn't look... Bellworth's head snapped toward her. His voice dropped to something cold and mean. Patricia, when you earn an MD, you can make medical calls. Until then, you hand out Motrin and shut your mouth. Understood? Patricia flinched. Her face went pink. She nodded without speaking, turned, and walked quickly toward the supply room. Tanya watched her go. Watched the way her shoulders hunched. Watched the way her hand trembled on the door handle. That wasn't the flinch of someone surprised by cruelty. That was the flinch of someone who had been broken by it before. Something clicked in Tanya's mind, quiet and sharp. She filed it away. She went back to her seat, rocked Aiden, waited. And she watched. Over the next 40 minutes, she watched Bellworth work the waiting room like a host at a dinner party. He laughed with a white father about a Saints game while examining the man's son's sprained wrist. He was gentle and warm with a white toddler who had a mild ear infection, making silly faces until the little girl giggled. He patted a white grandmother's hand as he reassured her about her grandson's stitches. Then he walked past a young black man in the corner holding a bloody towel around his hand. Didn't even slow down. Tanya's hand found her phone in her hoodie pocket. She opened the notes app. Her thumbs moved quietly, methodically. 9:47 p.m. White male, ankle sprain, seen immediately despite arriving 20 minutes after us. 10:03 p.m. White female toddler, ear infection, seen in 8 minutes. 10:18 p.m. White male, sprained wrist, seen in 12 minutes. 10:22 p.m. Black male, bleeding hand, ignored. She kept typing. Timestamps, descriptions, direct quotes, every single word Bellworth said, every single way he said it. A young woman in a white coat with a resident ID badge walked past. Her badge read, Dr. Hannah Sullivan. She was maybe 28, with tired eyes and a clipboard pressed against her chest. She slowed as she passed Tanya, stopped. She knelt down in front of Aiden. Her face changed immediately. Hi there, buddy. I'm Dr. Sullivan. Can I check your pulse real quick? Aiden didn't respond. Sullivan pressed 2 fingers against his wrist. Her jaw tightened. She pulled out a penlight, flashed it gently in his eyes. His pupils reacted sluggishly. Sullivan looked up at Tanya. How long has he been like this? About 6 hours. It's been getting worse. I told Dr. Bellworth. I know, I heard. Sullivan stood up fast. Stay here. I'm going to get him bumped up. She walked directly to Bellworth at the nurse's station. Tanya couldn't hear every word, but she could read the body language. Sullivan was pointing toward Aiden. Bellworth was shaking his head. Sullivan's voice got sharper. Bellworth's got louder. Sweetheart, when you've been doing this for 20 years like I have, you'll learn the difference between a sick kid and a hysterical mother. That boy has a virus. That mother needs a Xanax. Are we done with your little intervention, Dr. Sullivan? Or do you want to tell me how to do my job in front of the whole ER? Sullivan's face went red. Every nurse at the station was watching. Every patient in the waiting room had heard it. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Doctor, I just think a CBC would... I said we're done. Sullivan turned and walked away, fast, her eyes shining. She passed Tanya without looking at her, But as she went by, Tanya heard her whisper under her breath, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Tanya watched her disappear down the hallway. Then she looked down at Aiden. His eyes were half closed. His chest was rising and falling in quick, fluttery beats, like a bird trapped under a cloth. She pressed her lips to his forehead. Burning. Getting worse. Across the waiting room, a white mother was watching the whole thing with a horrified expression. She met Tanya's eyes and mouthed the words, "I'm so sorry." But she didn't stand up. She didn't say anything out loud. She pulled her own child closer and looked at the floor. Everyone in that room knew something was wrong. Nobody was doing a single thing about it. And Aiden's breathing was getting slower. The clock on the waiting room wall read 10:47 p.m. when Aiden stopped whimpering. That was the moment Tanya's blood turned to ice. Not the fever, not the shallow breathing, the silence. Her son had gone quiet against her chest, and quiet was so much worse than crying. She pressed her palm flat against his forehead and almost pulled it back. He was burning. She dug the thermometer out of her bag with one hand, her other arm locked around his small frame, and slid it under his tongue. He didn't resist. He didn't even move. The thermometer beeped. 105.1. Her hands started shaking. Not a little. A real tremor, the kind that made it hard to put the thermometer back in her bag. She closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. And in that second, she made a choice. Not a loud choice, not a screaming choice, but a quiet one that lived somewhere deep in her chest. "You will not bury my son tonight. Not you. Not here." She stood up. Her legs felt like water, but they held her. She walked to the nurse's station for the 3rd time. Bellworth was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone, laughing at a text. He looked up when her shadow fell across him. His smile dropped into a flat, annoyed line. "You again." "His fever is 105.1. Her voice was steady. Too steady. The kind of steady that costs something. "If he is not examined in the next 5 minutes, I am holding you personally responsible for whatever happens to him. Do you understand me?" Bellworth put his phone down. Slowly. He straightened up to his full height and stepped out from behind the counter. He walked until he was maybe 12 inches from her face. His breath smelled like coffee and something sour underneath. "Did you just threaten me?" "I stated a fact." "In my ER, in front of my staff." "My son is dying in my arms, and you are playing on your phone." A few heads in the waiting room turned. A woman gasped softly. The teenager who had been live streaming earlier lifted his phone again. Bellworth's face went a mottled red. He leaned closer. His voice dropped to something low and mean. The kind of voice a man uses when he thinks nobody but his target can hear him. "Let me explain something to you, sweetheart. I have been practicing medicine for 26 years. I have treated congressmen. I have treated CEOs. I have treated people who could buy and sell you 100 times over. And you walk into my emergency room in a Goodwill hoodie, dragging a sick kid like I owe you something, and you have the nerve to raise your voice at me?" "I didn't raise my—" "Shut up." His finger came up and stopped an inch from her face. "People like you always think screaming gets you to the front of the line. Well, not in my house. Not tonight. You sit down, you shut your mouth, or I will have you removed. Do I make myself clear?" Tanya didn't move, didn't blink. Aiden's small breath fluttered against her collarbone. "Examine my son." Bellworth's eyes went wide with something like disbelief. Then he laughed. An actual laugh, short and ugly. Okay, sweetheart. You want to play it that way?" He turned his head toward the nurse's station and barked loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Security! I've got a verbally aggressive patient refusing to follow staff instructions. Need a removal at the front desk." Somewhere in the back of the ER, a radio crackled. 2 sets of heavy footsteps started walking toward them. Tanya's stomach dropped, but her face didn't change. 2 security guards rounded the corner. One was older, maybe 60, with a gray mustache and dead eyes. A man who had done this before and didn't care who it was to. The other was younger, maybe 25, black, with a name tag that read Marcus Delaney. His eyes went immediately to Aiden. His footsteps slowed. Bellworth pointed at Tanya. "This woman is disrupting patient care. She's been warned 3 times. Escort her off the premises. Now." The older guard reached for Tanya's elbow. "Don't you touch her." Every head in the room snapped toward the voice. It came from a white woman in her 40s, sitting 3 chairs over. She was clutching her own daughter's hand. Her face had gone pale with anger. "That child is sicker than anyone in this room, and you all know it. I've been watching this for an hour. What is wrong with you people?" Bellworth's head whipped toward her. "Ma'am, this does not concern you. Mind your own business, or you'll be next." "Next for what? Being refused treatment? Is that a threat?" "Ma'am, I've got the whole thing on my phone, doctor. Every word. Starting from when you called her filthy." Bellworth's jaw clenched. His eyes darted around the room. 3 more phones were now openly recording. The teenager's live stream had over 400 viewers. The mood in the room had shifted. Slowly, then all at once. People weren't laughing anymore. They were watching. The older security guard still had his hand near Tanya's elbow, but he was looking at his younger partner, who hadn't moved. "Marcus, let's go." Marcus didn't move. "I said, let's go." "She's holding a sick kid, Jim. Look at him." "I don't give a damn what she's holding. The doctor gave an order." Marcus finally looked up. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Then you escort her out." "I'm not touching that woman." A murmur went through the waiting room. Bellworth's mottled red had climbed all the way up to his ears. It was in that exact moment of chaos, Bellworth screaming, Jim reaching, Marcus refusing, phones recording, the white woman half standing, that Patricia Owens came out of the supply room with a folded paper cup in her hand. She walked straight toward Tanya like she was delivering the Motrin. Nobody paid her any attention. She was just a nurse doing what the doctor ordered. Invisible. The way nurses like her had been invisible their whole careers. Patricia pressed the paper cup into Tanya's hand. Her other hand closed around Tanya's fingers for half a second. And in that half second, she pressed something else into Tanya's palm. Something small. Something folded. Something that wasn't medicine. Their eyes met. Patricia's were wet. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Just those 2 words. Then she walked away. Tanya closed her fist around the tiny folded square of paper. She sat back down in her plastic chair, pulled Aiden tighter against her chest, and under the cover of his little body, she opened it. The handwriting was shaky, like it had been written in a hurry. Maybe in the supply room. Maybe a year ago. He did this before. Last year. A little Latina girl almost died. I watched him change her chart after. I have the original. Her name was Sophia Ruiz. "I'm scared, but I can't keep carrying this. P. O." Tanya read it twice. Her face didn't change. Her breathing didn't change. To anyone watching, she looked exactly like a mother who had finally given up. Shoulders low, head bowed over her sick child. A woman who had been beaten down until there was nothing left. But inside her chest, something very old and very cold was waking up. She folded the paper, slipped it into the inside pocket of her hoodie, right against her ribs. Then she pulled out her phone. She opened a group chat labeled MGMC Executive Priority. Her thumb typed 3 lines. Emergency board session, East Campus, ER, 30 minutes, non-negotiable. Bring legal and HR. She hit send. Then she pressed the call button on one name. Victor Stanton, Chief of Staff. The phone rang twice.
Tanya, it's almost 11. Is everything...
Victor, listen to me carefully. I'm at East Campus ER with Aiden. He has a 105 fever, and a doctor here has refused to examine him for 2 hours. I have just been handed evidence of a prior medical cover-up by the same physician. I need you, Elaine, and 2 board members in this waiting room in 30 minutes, not 31. Bring badges, bring legal authority. Do not call ahead. A pause on the other end. I'm in my car. 20 minutes.
Tanya hung up.
Kissed the top of Aiden's head, and waited. The next 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Tanya sat perfectly still, rocking Aiden against her chest, counting his breaths. In, out. In, out. Each one a little shallower than the last. She didn't look at Bellworth. She didn't look at the security guards still hovering awkwardly 10 feet away. She didn't look at the phones still recording her. She looked at the clock. And she waited. 10:58 p.m. 11:04 p.m. 11:17 p.m.
Bellworth had gone back behind the nurse's station, pretending to do paperwork.
But every minute or so his eyes flicked to her, then away, then back again. Something about her stillness had started to bother him. She should have been crying. She should have been begging. She should have stormed out by now, or called someone, or made a scene. She was doing none of those things. She was just waiting. At 11:31 p.m., the automatic doors at the front of the ER hissed open.
A woman in a black trench coat thrown over what looked like pajamas walked in first.
Mid-50s, sharp silver bob, reading glasses pushed up on her head. Her heels clicked against the tile like gunshots. Behind her came a man in a suit jacket thrown hastily over a golf polo. Tall, gray-haired, face grim. Behind him, 2 more men in business casual, moving fast. Behind them, a younger woman with a tablet already open in her hands, walking so fast she was almost jogging.
5 people. 5 suits.
At 11:31 p.m. on a Saturday night, walking through a pediatric emergency room with a kind of purpose you only see in courtrooms and war rooms. Every single head in the waiting room turned. The teenager with the live stream sat up straight. The white woman who had defended Tanya pressed her hand to her mouth. Even the older security guard took a half-step back.
Bellworth looked up from his paperwork.
His face went through 3 expressions in under 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, and then something Tanya had been waiting an hour and 44 minutes to see. Fear. Because Bellworth knew Victor Stanton. Every doctor in the Mercy Grace system knew Victor Stanton. Chief of Staff, the man whose signature appeared on every promotion, every contract, every disciplinary letter. The man you did not want to see walking into your ER at 11:31 p.m. on a Saturday.
Stanton didn't look at Bellworth, didn't even glance in his direction.
He walked past the nurse's station, past the security guards, past the rows of plastic chairs, and straight to the woman in the coffee-stained hoodie holding a barely breathing child. He knelt down in front of her chair. "Tanya, I'm here. I'm so sorry. How is he?" Tanya's voice cracked for the first time all night. Just once. Just on one word. "He's dying, Victor." Stanton's head snapped up. "Elaine, now!" The woman in the trench coat. Elaine Crawford, head of legal, was already on her phone, walking fast. "I want a senior pediatrician to attend this ER in 3 minutes. I don't care who you wake up. 3 minutes." One of the board members was already dialing. The other had walked directly to Patricia Owens at the desk and was quietly asking for the night's patient logs, security footage timestamps, and every document with Dr. Bellworth's signature on it from the past 12 months. Bellworth stepped out from behind the station. His voice came out higher than usual. "Victor? Victor, what's happening? Who are these people? This is highly irregular. I'm in the middle of a shift. I can't have civilians." Stanton stood up slowly. He turned, and when he looked at Bellworth, his face was the face of a man who had already made up his mind about everything that was going to happen next. He walked across the waiting room until he was standing in the middle of it, equidistant from Bellworth, from Tanya, from the nurses, from the security guards, from the phones that were all, every single one of them, still recording. Then he spoke, loud enough for the live stream, loud enough for the cheap seats, loud enough to be heard in every single nightmare Craig Bellworth would have for the rest of his life. "Dr. Bellworth, the woman you just refused to treat, the woman you called filthy, the woman you called welfare trash, the woman you called a ghetto bitch in front of 30 witnesses and a live stream with 400 viewers." He paused, let it land. "That is Tanya Moore. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Mercy Grace Medical Center. She is the reason this hospital exists. She signs your paycheck, Dr. Bellworth. She signs my paycheck. And, as of 30 seconds ago, she is the last person you will ever answer to in this building." The silence that followed was not a normal silence. It was the silence of 40 human beings simultaneously forgetting how to breathe. Bellworth's mouth opened. No sound came out. A cup of coffee somewhere on the nurse's station tipped over and spilled onto the floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. And on the live stream, the viewer count had just climbed past 2,000. Bellworth found his voice, but it wasn't his voice anymore. It was something smaller, thinner, climbing higher with every word. Victor, there's been a misunderstanding. I couldn't possibly have known. She didn't identify herself. She didn't say anything. She was dressed like a mother." Stanton's voice was flat. "She was dressed like a mother whose child was dying, which, as it turns out, is exactly what she was." "Victor, please, if you'd just let me explain the triage protocol." "Craig." Stanton turned to face him fully. "There is no version of triage protocol that includes the words ghetto bitch. There is no version of it that includes welfare trash. There is no version where you refuse to examine a child with a 105 fever for 2 hours because you don't like how his mother is dressed. Don't insult me. And don't insult the 30 people in this room who just watched you do it." Behind them, a pediatrician attending Tanya recognized. Dr. Hannah Sullivan, the young resident, was already scooping Aiden out of Tanya's arms and rushing him toward a treatment room. Another nurse had an IV kit ready before they even reached the bed. Within 90 seconds, Aiden had a line in his arm, oxygen on his face, and 3 medical professionals working on him with the urgency he should have received the moment he walked through the door. Elaine Crawford stepped in front of Bellworth with a tablet held up like a shield. "Dr. Bellworth, I am Elaine Crawford, General Counsel for Mercy Grace Medical Center. I am informing you, verbally and for the record, that you are suspended from clinical duties effective immediately, pending investigation. Your hospital credentials are revoked as of this moment. Your access badge will be deactivated before you reach the parking lot. You are not to speak to any staff member, patient, or family member on your way out. Do you understand?" Bellworth's face had gone the color of wet paper. "You can't. I'm a senior attending. I have rights. I have a contract." "Your contract is on page 47 of my tablet. I've already flagged the termination clauses. We'll discuss them Monday through your attorney. For now, Mr. Delaney and Mr. Henderson will escort you off the premises." The 2 security guards stepped forward. Marcus Delaney,
The young blackguard who had refused to touch Tanya 40 minutes earlier was now the one asked to remove Bellworth. He did it without saying a single word. He just gestured toward the door with one hand, his face perfectly, professionally blank. Bellworth walked past the nurse's station in a daze, past the waiting room where every phone was still recording, past the white mother who had defended Tanya, who stared at him with her arms crossed, past the teenager whose live stream had just crossed 3,000 viewers, past Patricia Owens, who met his eyes once and then deliberately looked away. The automatic doors hissed open. Bellworth stepped out into the cold parking lot air, and that was the last time Craig Bellworth ever walked through the doors of a Mercy Grace Medical Center facility as a physician. Inside the treatment room, Dr. Sullivan was calling out numbers to a nurse. BP's 80/50, lactate's up. Let's get blood cultures, broad-spectrum antibiotics, saline bolus. Move, move, move. Tanya stood in the doorway. Her knees were shaking now, finally, after holding her up for 4 hours. Stanton put a hand on her elbow to steady her. They've got him, Tanya. They've got him. Sullivan looked up from Aiden's small body for half a second. Ma'am, Mrs. Moore, we're going to stabilize him. He's in early sepsis, but we caught it. Another hour and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But we did catch it, okay? Tanya nodded. She couldn't speak. Her hand found her mouth and stayed there. Behind her, Patricia Owens was already crying quietly into a tissue. Elaine Crawford was on the phone with the state medical board. One of the board members was requesting the past 3 years of Bellworth's patient complaint records, and in a quiet corner of the waiting room, the white mother who had stood up for Tanya sat back down, pulled her own daughter close, and whispered into her hair, "Remember this, baby. Remember what a brave woman looks like." Aiden slept. His small chest rose and fell under crisp white sheets, an IV dripping slow and steady into his arm. By 3 a.m., his fever had broken. By 6 a.m., his color was back. By the time the sun came up over the East Campus parking lot, Dr. Sullivan told Tanya the words every mother prays for. He's going to be okay. But Tanya Moore wasn't done, not even close. She walked out of that treatment room on Sunday morning, kissed her husband James on the forehead as he took over the bedside vigil, and drove straight to the main Mercy Grace corporate office. She was still wearing the coffee-stained hoodie. She didn't care. There were 3 things in the pocket of that hoodie that mattered more than any suit in her closet. Patricia Owens's handwritten note, her phone with 71 minutes of documented evidence, and the mother's promise made in a plastic chair at 10:47 p.m. By 9 a.m. Sunday, a formal internal investigation had been launched. By noon, the security footage from East Campus ER had been pulled, time-stamped, and preserved by legal. Every single minute of Bellworth's behavior, from the first dismissive glance to the moment Marcus Delaney escorted him out the door, was archived and backed up to 3 separate servers. Nothing could be deleted. Nothing could be edited. Nothing could be made to disappear the way other things had disappeared in this hospital before. By 3 p.m. Sunday, Patricia Owens was sitting in a conference room with Elaine Crawford and 2 outside attorneys, telling the story she had been carrying like a stone in her chest for over a year. Her voice shook at first. Her hands wouldn't stay still in her lap. But once she started, she couldn't stop. A little girl named Sophia Ruiz, 4 years old, Latina, brought in last summer by her mother, who worked 2 jobs cleaning offices and didn't speak much English. Severe headaches, vomiting, light sensitivity, fever. Classic warning signs any first-year medical student would flag. Bellworth had taken one look at the mother, one look at the insurance card, and written viral gastroenteritis in the chart without ordering a single test. He had sent Sophia home with instructions to push fluids. He had told the mother in slow, loud English that she was overreacting and wasting ER resources and needed to
Stop coming here for every little thing.
12 hours later, Sophia came back in her mother's arms, seizing, unresponsive, lips blue. Bacterial meningitis. She spent 11 days in the pediatric ICU fighting for her life. She survived, but she lost permanent hearing in her left ear, and her family spent the next year drowning in medical bills they couldn't pay on a cleaning woman's wages. And the next morning, the morning after Sophia's second admission, Patricia had watched Bellworth sit down at a computer terminal and quietly edit his own notes from the original visit. He added phrases that had never existed, recommended further workup. The family declined additional testing. Patient discharged against medical advice. He saved the changes. He logged out. He walked away whistling. Patricia had seen it. Patricia had known, and Patricia had been too afraid to speak, because Bellworth was a senior attending, and she was a nurse with 2 kids at home and a mortgage, and everyone in that hospital knew exactly what happened to nurses who crossed doctors like him. Broken schedules, quiet firings, lost references, blacklists nobody admitted existed. She cried through most of her statement. Elaine Crawford handed her tissues and told her gently to keep going. By Monday morning, digital forensics had confirmed everything Patricia said. The original chart had a changelog. The edits were time-stamped to 7:42 a.m., the morning after Sophia's readmission, logged under Bellworth's credentials from his personal office workstation. The original notes, the ones that contained no mention of any further testing, were still sitting in an archive layer he hadn't known existed. He hadn't just been racist. He had committed felony medical fraud. By Monday afternoon, the story broke wide open. A local investigative reporter named Denise Carter got the tip from a source inside the hospital. Not Tanya, not anyone on the board, just a quiet employee who had finally decided enough was enough. Denise pulled the live stream footage from Saturday night, which was still sitting on the teenager's TikTok with 11 million views and climbing. She pulled the security footage Mercy Grace had voluntarily released. She pulled court records. She pulled Sophia Ruiz's mother's phone number from a legal aid organization. Sophia's mother answered on the second ring, and when Denise explained, in careful Spanish, who Dr. Bellworth was and what he had done to her daughter, the woman on the other end of the phone started crying so hard she had to hand the phone to her sister. Denise Carter's story aired Monday night at 6. Hospital CEO's own child denied treatment by racist doctor. Year-long cover-up of Latina girl's near-fatal misdiagnosis exposed. It went national by 9 p.m. It was trending on 3 platforms by midnight. By Tuesday morning, 7 more former patients had come forward. A black grandfather sent home with indigestion that turned out to be a heart attack. A young Somali mother told her baby had just a rash that turned out to be a dangerous staph infection. A homeless veteran Bellworth had literally refused to touch. Every story matched the same pattern. Every story had been buried by the same man wearing the same white coat. The consequences came down like an avalanche nobody could stop. The State Medical Board held an emergency review on Wednesday. By Friday, Craig Bellworth's medical license was permanently revoked. Not suspended, revoked. The chairwoman of the board used the word disgrace 3 separate times in her public statement. The district attorney filed criminal charges the following Monday: felony medical fraud, falsification of medical records, and reckless endangerment of a minor. Bellworth surrendered himself on a cold Tuesday morning, his attorney beside him, his face gray as cement. Sophia Ruiz's family filed a civil lawsuit first. 2 other patients who had come forward filed theirs within the week. Bellworth's personal assets were frozen within 10 days. His 4-bedroom house went on the market within a month. His wife filed for divorce that same month, citing the public humiliation and the marriage she said had been dying quietly for years. And in federal court, 8 months later, Craig Bellworth stood in front of a judge and was sentenced to 18 months in prison, 5 years of probation, and full financial restitution to every victim.
He walked out of that courtroom in handcuffs. A photographer from the Associated Press caught the shot. Bellworth, head down, wrists bound, being led through a crowd of reporters, and it ran on the front page of newspapers in 6 states the next morning. Outside the courthouse, Sofia Ruiz's mother stood with her daughter balanced on her hip. Sofia waved a small paper American flag at the cameras. Her mother said, in English she had practiced for weeks with her sister the night before, "Today my daughter is safe. Today the truth is louder than the lie. Thank you." 6 months later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Aidan Moore sat at the piano in his living room, his small fingers stumbling through the opening notes of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. He missed the 3rd note, then the 5th. Then he laughed, that bright, unguarded laugh of a child who has no memory of almost dying, and started over from the beginning. Tanya watched him from the kitchen doorway, a dish towel in her hands. James came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned back into him without taking her eyes off their son. "He doesn't remember any of it," she whispered. "I know. I remember enough for both of us." Outside the window, the afternoon sun was turning gold across the tree-lined street. Inside, Aidan was butchering Mozart. And somewhere deep inside Tanya's chest, a knot that had been tied tight since 10:47 p.m. on that Saturday night, finally began to loosen. But the story didn't end in that kitchen. Patricia Owens never went back to bedside nursing. She became Mercy Grace's first full-time patient advocacy director, a position Tanya created specifically for her. Patricia spent her days now walking the floors of every Mercy Grace facility, listening to patients nobody else was listening to, and making sure their complaints never got buried in an archive layer anyone could pretend didn't exist. Dr. Hannah Sullivan, the young resident who had knelt in front of Aidan and refused to look away, was promoted twice in 18 months. By the time she turned 30, she was the youngest director of emergency pediatrics in the history of Mercy Grace Medical Center. She kept a framed copy of Sofia Ruiz's first day of kindergarten photo on her office desk. Sofia Ruiz started 1st grade the following September, wearing a pink backpack almost as big as she was. The civil settlement paid off her family's medical debt, funded a college savings account, and bought her mother the first home she had ever owned. A small blue house with a yard big enough for Sofia to learn how to ride a bike. Marcus Delaney, the young security guard who had refused to lay a hand on Tanya, was promoted to head of patient safety at East Campus within a year, and Mercy Grace itself was transformed. Tanya rolled out mandatory bias training with teeth. Real scenarios, real consequences, real follow-up. She created an anonymous complaint hotline staffed around the clock. She stationed patient advocate liaisons in every emergency room in the system. Within the first 6 months, that hotline caught 2 more cases of discriminatory treatment early enough to stop them before anyone got hurt. The system Tanya built was already saving lives she would never meet. And Craig Bellworth? He served 14 months of his 18-month sentence. He was released to a small rented apartment in a town where nobody recognized him. His name had become unsearchable without the word racist attached. He never practiced medicine again. He never would. Tanya Moore had a title. She had board members on speed dial. She had the kind of power most people never get within 100 miles of in their whole lives. And she still had to sit in a plastic chair, holding her dying child, being called slurs on a live stream, before anyone in that hospital treated her son like he mattered. So what about the mothers who don't have the title? What about the Sofia Ruizes who never get their day in court? What about the nurses who see what Patricia saw and swallow it because their mortgage is due? What about the bleeding black man in the corner of every ER in America who gets walked past because someone decided in half a second what kind of person he was? Those people are real. Their stories are real. And the only reason most of them never make the news is because nobody with a title happened to be sitting in the chair next to them. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you hopeful, if it made you think about something you've seen and stayed silent about, do me one favor. Hit that like button. Share this with one person who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because next week's story might hit even harder. Because justice shouldn't depend on your job title or your bank account or the color of your skin. It should just be. And until it is, we keep telling these stories together.
Beowulf lost everything. License, gone. Freedom, gone. And Aiden, his home, banging on that piano like nothing ever happened. But here's what keep me up at night. Tanya is a CEO. She ran that hospital, signed the paychecks, had lawyers on speed dial, and she still sat there 2 hours, holding her dying son, being called a ghetto bitch on a live stream. She had all the power, and it still almost wasn't enough. So the mom who doesn't have the title, the next Sophia Ruiz, whose mom cleaned office and doesn't speak English, the man bleeding quietly in the corner that Beowulf will right past. The people who make the news, not because they don't matter, but because nobody with power happened to be in the room. And I gotta ask you something real. You ever got someone get treated like they're invisible and just stay quiet? I know I have. But Patricia held that secret a whole year before she left that note.